The ancient Egyptians did it on papyrus. The Greeks did it the same way. The Chinese did it using bronze. Today, everyone does it using the internet. That's right, viewers, we're talking about advertising. Welcome to Intrigued Mind, where today we will investigate history's biggest advertising disasters. Did you know that advertising dates as far back as ancient Egypt? Yes, that's right. The ancient Egyptians made sales posters using papyrus. The ancient Greeks and Romans followed suit. The first example of an extant printed advertisement comes to us from China, when the Liu family, who lived sometime during the Song dynasty, 960 CE to 1279 CE, used a rabbit logo embossed on bronze to advertise their needle business. In the Middle Ages, at a time when not many people could read, merchants advertised their trade with pictures rather than words. A cobbler, for example, would have a wooden sign hanging above their shop doorway with a boot painted on it to show shoppers what kind of business lay within. By the mid-19th century, advertising was a common aspect of capitalist society, with print being the most common medium. Then, with the invention of radio and television in the 20th century, advertising was taken to a whole new level. And with that came some of the biggest advertising disasters in history. You're probably familiar with the old saying, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." Well, someone should have told the head honchos at Coca-Cola this. In 1985, they decided to do away with their classic formula and instead offered consumers what they called New Coke. This came after Coke sales went down, with consumer testing indicating they preferred the sweeter taste of Pepsi. Coca-Cola conducted some blind testing of their new product, which scored more favorable reviews than both original Coke and Pepsi. However, these results did not translate into the general population, and consumers thought New Coke was gross. Fans of the original were so enraged that they even started protest rallies, holding placards that shouted, "Our children will never know refreshment." This statement indicates just how much Americans love their Coke. Coca-Cola took notice of what the public was telling them, and they reverted back to their original formula, rebranding it Coke Classic. The upshot of all this was that sales of original Coke bounced back after the New Coke fiasco. It appeared that people had a newfound appreciation of their old favorite, in the face of the possibility of it disappearing forever. You don't know what you've got till it's gone, seems to sum up consumer attitudes on this advertising disaster. Rumors sprang up after this advertising disaster, saying that the entire New Coke campaign was brainstormed by advertising executives as a way of bolstering sales of original Coca-Cola. Either way, the New Coke advertising campaign of 1985 remains a cautionary tale to companies about not messing with a well-loved product. Our next advertising disaster predates the Coke disaster by 1 year. 1984 was an Olympics Games year. The host city for this event, Los Angeles. To celebrate the games of the 23rd Olympiad, McDonald's decided to get its American customers into the spirit of the games by offering customers a chance to win some of their products via a scratch ticket system that represented a particular event that was handed to customers when they made a purchase. If the customer scratched a gold medal ticket for their ticketed event, then they would win a Big Mac. A silver medal ticket would win the recipient an order of French fries. Bronze medal ticket holders would be rewarded with a Coca-Cola. What is it with Coke and advertising disasters? Seems like a sound business plan, except it wasn't. At the time, the Cold War was still 6 years away from its conclusion, and in 1984, the USA and the USSR were still arch enemies. They were also the best competitors in many events by a country mile. The athletes of these two nations had trained hard to fight it out on the battlefield that was Los Angeles sports stadiums. In a dull moment, McDonald's had to make good on their promise of free burgers, fries, and soda by the thousands when the USA cleaned up in almost every main event at the 1984 Olympics, winning medals in 174 events, 83 of them being gold. Thousands of McDonald's outlets across the country ran out of Big Macs. The reason why? The Soviets decided to boycott the games that year. America had boycotted the previous Olympic Games of 1980 that had been held in Moscow in protest of their invasion of Afghanistan. So, in 1984, Russia played tit for tat, citing concerns over security and anti-Soviet hysteria as their reasons for not competing. McDonald's has remained tight-lipped about how much this particular advertising disaster cost their company. But given that the Big Mac is the product with the highest profit margin, and the number of burgers they had to dish out for free due to the American gold medal count, it is estimated to be pretty darn high. Perhaps some political analysis may have been in order for McDonald's prior to the advertising disaster of 1984. Going back to the froth and bubble of the soda empire, in 2008, Dr. Pepper launched a campaign to give each and every person in America a free bottle of Dr. Pepper if heavy metal rock band Guns N' Roses released their long-awaited album Chinese Democracy by the end of the year. No agreement between the company and the band about this promotion was ever struck. Given that Guns N' Roses' previous studio album, The Spaghetti Incident, had been released 15 years earlier, which is an epoch in the music world, it seemed as if Dr. Pepper was on solid ground in not having to stump up the promised bottles of soda. However, in true Gunners fashion, Axl Rose and his new lineup shocked the public when they released their highly anticipated studio album Chinese Democracy at the 11th hour on the 23rd of November 2008. This was just in time to force Dr. Pepper to make good on their promise to give every person in America a free drink. Never one to shy away from public confrontation, Axl Rose had his lawyers issue a public letter which referred to the publicity stunt as an unmitigated disaster, denouncing the soda giant for defrauding customers, ruining the album's release, and tarnishing the band's reputation. America's population stood at 305 million people in 2008, each and every one of whom could have called in their free bottle of Dr. Pepper if they had wanted to. In a quandary as to how to honor their promise, the company put the offer to the public that if they wanted their free soda, then they would have to go online to redeem a voucher that was issued via email. Problems with their website crashing made it impossible for Dr. Pepper to even partially make good on their promise. It is not known how many vouchers were redeemed and how much money this publicity stunt cost Dr. Pepper, but they were certainly left with egg on their face after the incident. Luckily for Guns N' Roses, the fiasco did not seem to harm their record sales. Chinese Democracy sold over 500,000 copies in the first few months of its release. Our final disastrous advertising campaign is one of the vehicular variety. We have all heard of Ford. It has been one of America's best-known and best-loved motor car brands ever since Henry Ford's affordable T-model rolled off the assembly line en masse in the interwar years. In 1957, Ford decided it was time to launch what they dubbed the car of the future, the Ford Edsel. Unfortunately for Ford, it was not the kind of future that the American public actually wanted. First of all, Ford had 18 other car models for sale. This was unheard of at the time, when car companies only produced a handful of different models. Therefore, the Edsel had to compete against its own garage mates, such as the popular Ford Mercury. The next problem with the Edsel was its price, which started at $2,500 American dollars for a basic model and shot up to $3,800 for one with all the bells and whistles, which in 1957 was far too expensive for the average middle-class American family, who were Ford's bread-and-butter customers. Even worse was the fact that the Edsel was plagued with reliability and quality issues. Power steering failure, leaky trunks, and dodgy welding were amongst some of the most common problems with the Edsel as cited by disgruntled customers. Finally, the Edsel was considered ugly by many. The car's vertical grille, which was essential for keeping its motor cool, looked downright ridiculous in the eyes of customers. The car was subsequently dubbed the horse collar and the toilet seat as a result of its unsophisticated design aesthetic. This truly was one of history's biggest advertising disasters, with the Edsel debacle costing Ford a staggering $250 million. The only winner from the Ford Edsel advertising disaster was Grandma, who stored her eyesore Ford in the garage for 50 years. Today, these cars are a collector's item and fetch a very decent price at auction. The one common thread that weaves itself through each of these advertising tales of woe is market research, or lack of. Companies must first ask their customers this one pertinent question: what do you want? Secondly, what other extraneous factors outside of your control can affect this promotion? Because let's face it, Cold Wars and new Gunners albums are history-changing events. For more videos on the most amazing forgotten parts of our history, be sure to subscribe to the Intrigued Mind channel, like the video, and leave your suggestions in the comments below.